You played these games as a kid, you watched the show every Saturday morning, and the whole time, there were things hiding just beneath the surface that would have wrecked you if you'd noticed. Fan theories, some backed by actual in-game evidence, that reframe the entire franchise as something way darker than Nintendo ever intended. Let's start with the one everyone's heard. Ash's Coma. Ash's Coma is hands down the most famous dark Pokemon theory. The idea, in the very first episode, when Ash protects Pikachu from that angry flock of Spearow, Pikachu fires a massive thunderbolt combined with a thunderstorm strike, and Ash is struck down hard. The theory claims he never wakes up. Everything we see afterwards, the endless adventures, his static age of 10, the revolving cast of friends, are all just hallucinations in a coma. Sounds crazy, right? But hear me out. Ash staying 10 years old for decades isn't just a show quirk, it fits perfectly with a comatose mind frozen in time. His ever-changing companions, psychological coping mechanisms, Team Rocket's eternal, incompetent chasing, a sanitized version of his anxieties, the endless regions, fresh dreamscapes as his brain tries desperately to spin new stories while trapped in limbo. Even the surreal encounters with legendary Pokemon make sense here. Spiritual guides in Ash's fading consciousness. The theory even gives meaning to Ash finally winning the Alola League, a last burst of internal triumph before his mind slips away completely. This theory never came from the official creators. It began as a creepypasta essay, but it stuck around because it neatly explains so many production oddities and it hits with a gut punch. What if the entire Pokemon anime is just the fantasy of a dying child's mind? But if you think Ash's Coma is disturbing, wait until you hear the nightmare behind Lavender Town. Lavender Town Syndrome. This is the most infamous Pokemon creepypasta of all time, and it's not even close. The story goes like this. When Pokemon Red and Green launched in Japan in 1996, the Lavender Town theme contained high-frequency tones only children could hear. Kids started getting headaches, nosebleeds, nausea, then allegedly over 200 of them took their own lives. Nintendo quietly altered the music in later cartridges and nobody talked about it. Here's the thing, none of it happened. ROM analysis confirms the Lavender Town theme was never changed between the Japanese release and international versions. Same track, same frequencies. The original Dangerous version passed around online, fan-made. Those spectrograms showing hidden skulls in the audio, hoaxes, and most critically, there are zero verifiable news reports, zero public health records, zero documentation of any suicide cluster linked to Pokemon. A wave of 200 child deaths would have been the biggest news story of 1996. It wasn't because it didn't happen. But here's why the myth refuses to die. The Lavender Town theme is genuinely unsettling. It taps into real anxieties about subliminal messages harming children, the same moral panic energy that fueled backmasking scares and video game violence hearings. The creepypasta works because the seed of discomfort is real, even if everything built on top of it is fiction. But if you think one unsettling piece of music is dark, wait until you hear the theory about why Cubone never takes off that skull. Cubone is a baby Kangaskhan. This one hits different because the evidence isn't buried in game code, it's right there on the screen every time you open the Pokédex. Cubone wears the skull of its dead mother. That's not a theory. That's official canon, repeated across multiple generations of Pokédex entries. It cries at night, remembering her face. This is a children's game, by the way. But here's where it gets interesting. Look at the baby in Kangaskhan's pouch. That baby has no species name, no Pokédex entry, no evolutionary stage. It just exists as part of Kangaskhan's design, which is, not how any other Pokemon works. Now compare that baby's body shape to Cubone without the skull. Similar rounded head, similar stubby arms, similar stance. The theory is simple. When a mother Kangaskhan dies, her orphaned baby takes her skull, puts it on like armor, and grief literally rewrites its evolutionary path. Instead of growing into another Kangaskhan, it becomes Marowak, a completely different species born from trauma. Mega Kangaskhan later made the baby a full combat participant, practically screaming, "This thing should be its own species." The theory is unconfirmed, but it's so thematically airtight that most of the community treats it as near canon. And honestly, it makes the Marowak ghost in Lavender Town hit 10 times harder when you realize that Spirit might be a Kangaskhan who died protecting the baby we now call Cubone. But if you think one dead mother is disturbing, wait until you hear how that ghost actually died, because Lavender Tower's most famous resident isn't just a tragedy, it's a murder scene. The ghost of Lavender Tower is a murder victim. This one isn't a theory, this is just something that happens in a children's game rated E for everyone. In Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, there's a tower in Lavender Town that serves as a graveyard for dead Pokemon. You walk in, ghosts block your path, and most of them turn out to be Wild Ghastly and Haunter once you get the Silph Scope. But one of them doesn't. because one of them is the restless spirit of a mother Marowak who was beaten to death by Team Rocket while trying to protect her baby, Cubone. A criminal organization murdered a mother in front of her child, and her soul couldn't move on. The game makes you fight her ghost. You battle the spirit of a murder victim, and after you win, she finally finds peace and disappears. You, a 10-year-old, are directly intervening in the spiritual aftermath of a homicide. That's the actual quest. Meanwhile, Team Rocket grunts are camped out on the upper floors of what is essentially a sacred cemetery because desecrating a graveyard is just Tuesday for these people. Here's the thing, this moment quietly confirms something the rest of the franchise dances around. Pokemon can die from human violence, grief can trap a soul in the physical world, and spiritual consequences are real. All of that buried in a Game Boy cartridge marketed to 7-year-olds. But if one dead mother is disturbing, wait until you hear about an entire generation of dead fathers. Because there's a reason almost no adults exist in Kanto. The Great Pokemon War. One line of dialogue. That's all it took to launch one of the biggest fan theories in Pokemon history. Lata Surge, the Vermilion City Gym leader, tells you straight up that electric Pokemon saved him during the war. Not a skirmish. A war. One serious enough that a military lieutenant fought in it using Pokemon as weapons. Here's where it gets interesting. The games never elaborate, there's no history book, no memorial, no follow-up dialogue from any other character, just one throwaway line from a guy whose entire personality is loud American military dude. The community took that single sentence and built an entire theory about what this war was, who fought in it, and what it did to the region. The theory suggests that Kanto's world structure, kids leaving home at 10, sparse adult populations, absent parents, might be explained by a devastating conflict. Compelling lens. But here's the thing, Kanto has plenty of functioning adults. Every gym has trainers, every route has hikers and bug catchers well past childhood. The missing generation reading requires you to squint pretty hard at what's actually just a game designed around a child protagonist perspective. What is canon is this. Latiro Surge fought in a war. Pokemon were used as military assets. And Game Freak never bothered to explain what that war actually was. That's the real mystery. Not fan speculation about demographic collapse, but the fact that the developers dropped a lore bomb in Generation 1 and just walked away from it forever. But if one unexplained line spawned an entire conspiracy theory, wait until you hear what happened to your rival's Raticate on the SS. And Gary's Raticate died on the SS Anne. This one's personal. Not for Gary, not for the game, for you. Because if this theory is true, you killed a teenager's Pokemon and never even noticed. Here's the setup. You board the SS Anne in Vermilion City, battle your rival, and his team includes Eradicate, you beat him, move on, and probably forget about it. But next time you see him, he's standing in Pokemon Tower, Lavender Town, the place for mourning dead Pokemon. And guess what? Raticate is missing from his team. No explanation, no swapping message, just gone. Then he drops the line, "What are you doing here? Your Pokemon don't look dead." At first it sounds like a poke at you, but it actually implies something else. One of his Pokemon looks dead, because he's here to mourn a loss. Now here's where the theory sinks its teeth in. The SS Anne has no Pokemon Center. If Raticate got worn down in battle and you didn't heal it fast enough, it died somewhere on that ship, and the person who caused it? You. Afterward, your rival changes. Before Lavender Town, he's cocky and playful. After, focused and driven, like grief is fueling his rise, which many fans see as trauma. Sure, trainers swap Pokemon all the time. Maybe he boxed Raticate for something stronger. But the timing, the place, and that line in the tower, it's all too suspicious. Buy the theory or not, it flips your rival from a nuisance to a grieving kid whose loss you caused. But if you think one dead Raticate is dark, wait until you hear what Ditto really is. Ditto is a failed Mew clone. This one isn't a theory held together by vibes and wishful thinking. This is held together by an almost uncomfortable number of coincidences that all point in the exact same direction. Let's stack them up. Mew weighs 8.8 pounds. Ditto weighs 8.8 pounds. Mew is pinkish purple. Ditto is pinkish purple. Mew's shiny form is blue. Ditto's shiny form is blue. In the early generations, Mew and Ditto were the only two Pokemon that could naturally use Transform. Nobody else. Just them. Then there's the breeding. Ditto can breed with almost any Pokemon regardless of gender or egg group, functioning like a universal genetic template. Exactly what you'd expect from something derived from Mew, the Pokemon whose DNA supposedly contains the blueprint for every species. But here's where it gets damning. In Pokemon Red and Blue, where do you find Ditto? Cerulean Cave, where Mewtwo lives. The areas around Cinnabar Island, where the Pokemon Mansion journals describe scientists cloning Mew. Ditto is literally scattered around the crime scenes like discarded evidence. And any one of these alone is a coincidence. All of them together feels like a confession. Every Ditto you've ever caught isn't a naturally occurring species, it's a failed experiment. A Mew too broken to hold a single shape, too unstable to be useful, but too alive to throw away, just released into the wild like biological waste, and you've been using them as breeding machines in daycare centers ever since. Which is, not ideal, but if you think failed science experiments are unsettling, wait until you hear what certain ghost Pokemon actually are, because the Pokédex doesn't even try to hide it. Ghost Pokemon are trapped human souls. This isn't fan speculation. These are direct quotes from the game's own encyclopedia written by the developers, shipped on the cartridge, and handed to children. Drifloon is a Pokemon formed by the spirits of people and Pokemon. It tugs on the hands of children to steal them away. Kids mistake it for a balloon, grab on, and are never seen again. That's child abduction described in a kid's game encyclopedia entry. Then there's Yamask. It carries a mask that used to be its face, its human face, from when it was alive. Sometimes it looks at the mask and cries. A creature that remembers being a person, trapped in a form it never chose. That's existential imprisonment. Phantump is even more explicit. It is the spirit of a child who died lost in a forest, now inhabiting a rotted tree stump. No, some say or legend has it, a dead kid became this thing. And Banette might be the worst. A discarded plush doll that came to life fueled by vengeance. It generates curse energy by sticking pins into its own body and actively hunts the child who threw it away. Self-harm as a power source. Cool, that's in the game. Now here's the part nobody wants to sit with. If you take these entries at face value, trainers are catching and commanding dead children. A Phantump in your party is a lost child following your orders. A Yamask battling for you is a person who cries when it remembers its own face. But if the Pokédex can't be trusted on this, can it be trusted on anything? Mr. Mime is Ash's father. Look, we need to talk about the humanoid clown creature in Delia Ketchum's kitchen wearing an apron and making breakfast. Early in the anime, Ash's mom acquires a Mr. Mime, and this Mr. Mime never leaves. He's not a battle companion. He cooks, he cleans, he shovels the driveway. He is, for all intents and purposes, a live-in domestic partner who happens to be 4 feet tall and made of psychic energy. Meanwhile, Ash's actual father is mentioned exactly once, described vaguely as a trainer who left on a journey and has never appeared in the show. Producers have confirmed he exists but have zero plans to ever show him. So effectively, he's a narrative ghost, which means the only consistent male presence in the Ketchum household is a psychic, taut fairy-type Pokemon performing husband duties since Ash was 10 years old. Hey honey, could you take out the trash? Mime? Great. Normal family dynamic. The biological interpretation is obviously played for laughs, but underneath the meme is a genuinely strange creative choice. The anime accidentally built a functioning domestic partnership between a single mother and a humanoid Pokemon and just never acknowledged it. Never once had a character say, hey, isn't it kind of weird that your mom lives with a clown man? It raises real questions about where the Pokemon world draws the line between companion and partner. Because Mimer isn't guarding the house like an Arcanine. He's folding laundry and making dinner. That's not a pet. I don't know what that is, but it's not a pet. But hey, at least the Mr. Mime situation is just uncomfortable. The next theory makes the entire Pokemon world genuinely terrifying because it asks one simple question: what if the Pokédex is telling the truth? The Pokédex is literal. Every theory on this list requires you to read between the lines. To infer, speculate, connect dots. The games never explicitly connect, but this last one just asks you to read it. The Pokédex is the franchise's own internal encyclopedia, written by professors, presented as scientific fact, and if you take it at face value, the Pokemon world is a normalized horror show that makes every other theory on this list worse. Drifloon disguises itself as a balloon and drags children away. Phantump is the wandering spirit of a child who died lost in a forest. Yamask carries a mask that used to be its human face and cries when it looks at it. Banette is a discarded doll that came to life to hunt down the child who threw it away. These aren't fan theories. These are official game descriptions. And here's what should genuinely unsettle you. In this world, 10-year-olds are sent alone into wilderness populated by these things. Training a Phantump means commanding a dead child. Using Yamask in battle means weaponizing a grieving human soul. Nobody in universe finds this unusual. Fans actively argue the Pokédex must be unreliable, that entries are exaggerated, because the alternative is accepting that the franchise's own encyclopedia describes routine child abduction, soul imprisonment, and predatory horror dressed up in bright colors and cheerful music, which is, not ideal, but that's exactly what makes this the perfect closer. Every theory we've covered today becomes infinitely worse if the Pokédex is accurate. The ghost Pokemon aren't metaphors. The missing adults aren't a design choice. The world isn't quirky, it's monstrous. And the only thing separating Pokemon from a horror franchise is the deliberate choice to not think too hard about what the games are actually telling you. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.